Have you ever been pushed so far that you forgot to be polite? That's what happened when Zuri Mills walked into Chicago's most exclusive charity gala and heard wealthy socialites casually dismiss her as someone who didn't belong. Their cruel comments about breeding and pedigree ignited something fierce inside her, and what she said next about measuring people by character instead of bank accounts shocked the entire ballroom and changed her life forever. Zuri Mills stood in the gleaming lobby of the Chicago Meridian Hotel, her second-hand dress feeling like armor that wasn't quite strong enough for the battle ahead. The annual Riverside Community Fundraiser was supposed to be her chance to secure donations for the struggling community center where she worked as coordinator. Instead, she felt like a fraud surrounded by people whose monthly charity budgets exceeded her yearly salary. The marble floors reflected crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than most families made in a decade. Women in designer gowns glided past, their jewelry catching the light like tiny stars, while men in perfectly tailored tuxedos discussed business deals over champagne that cost more per bottle than Zuri spent on groceries in a month. At 38, Zuri had learned to hold her head high regardless of circumstances. She'd raised her 17-year-old son Damien alone, earned her social work degree through night school, and built programs that had changed hundreds of lives. But standing here among Chicago's elite, she felt every dollar she'd ever struggled to stretch, every time she'd chosen between paying the electric bill and buying Damien new shoes. "Excuse me, are you the help?" The voice belonged to an elegant woman whose pearl necklace could have funded the community center for 6 months. Daphne Doyle, matriarch of one of Chicago's oldest fortunes, looked at Zuri with the kind of polite disdain reserved for people who had clearly wandered into the wrong social stratum. "I'm Zuri Mills, coordinator of the Riverside Community Center," Zuri replied, extending her hand with professional courtesy. "We're one of tonight's beneficiaries." Daphne's smile never wavered, but her eyes grew colder. "How quaint. Though I must say, dear, this is quite a sophisticated crowd. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in the staff area?" Before Zuri could respond, another woman appeared at Daphne's elbow. Molly Olson had the sharp features of someone who survived on gossip and the misfortunes of others. "Oh Daphne, you're so gracious," Molly cooed, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "It's admirable when they try to better themselves, isn't it? Though breeding does show. Some people simply aren't raised for these environments." Heat flooded Zuri's cheeks. She'd encountered subtle racism and classism before, but never delivered with such polished cruelty. Every instinct told her to walk away, to preserve her dignity and the center's reputation. But then Molly continued, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "I do hope she realizes this isn't the welfare office. These events require a certain pedigree." Something inside Zuri snapped. Years of being overlooked, dismissed, and treated as less than worthy crystallized into a moment of pure, righteous fury. "Pedigree?" Zuri's voice cut through the ambient chatter like a blade. "Is that what we're calling basic human decency now? Because where I come from, we measure people by their character, not their bank account balance." The nearby conversations died as heads turned toward the commotion. Crystal glasses paused halfway to lips, and even the string quartet seemed to play more softly. "Now see here," Daphne began, but Zuri was just getting started. "No, you see here," Zuri interrupted, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent years advocating for people who couldn't speak for themselves. "I run programs that feed hungry children, help single mothers get job training, and provide safe spaces for teenagers who have nowhere else to go. What exactly do you do besides inherit money and look down on people who actually work for a living?" The ballroom had gone completely silent. Servers stopped mid-stride, guests stared in fascination, and somewhere in the crowd, a phone camera began recording. It was into this electric silence that Austin Doyle stepped forward. At 35, Austin commanded attention without trying. 6 feet tall with dark hair and intelligent blue eyes, he moved through the crowd with the confident grace of someone who had never questioned his place in the world. As CEO of Doyle Industries, he was Chicago's most eligible bachelor and one of its most powerful business leaders. He was also Daphne Doyle's son. "Mother," he said quietly, his voice carrying just enough warning to make Daphne step back. "Perhaps you could introduce me to our guest." Austen's eyes met Zuri's, and she felt an unexpected jolt of something. Not fear, though she probably should have been afraid. Not embarrassment, though she'd just publicly humiliated his mother. Something else entirely, recognition, maybe, or the sudden awareness that this man was seeing her, really seeing her, in a way that had nothing to do with her dress or her background. "Austen, darling," Daphne said quickly, "this person was just telling the truth," Austen interrupted, never taking his eyes off Zuri. "Which is refreshing at one of these events." He stepped closer, and Zuri caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something else, integrity, maybe, or the kind of quiet strength that didn't need to announce itself. "I'm Austen Doyle," he said, extending his hand. "And you are absolutely right about the pedigree comment. It was inappropriate and beneath the standards we should hold ourselves to." Zuri stared at him, completely thrown off balance. She'd expected anger, maybe threats, possibly security being called. She hadn't expected agreement. "Zuri Mills," she managed, accepting his handshake. His skin was warm, his grip firm, and when their eyes met, she felt that strange jolt again, like recognition, like coming home, like standing at the edge of a cliff and realizing you might want to jump. "Tell me about your community center, Ms. Mills," Austen said, still holding her hand. "What kind of work do you do?" And just like that, in the middle of a ballroom full of Chicago's elite, with his humiliated mother standing nearby and half the city's social photographers capturing the moment, Austen Doyle asked Zuri Mills to tell him about her work. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and join our Dear Love Diaries family. Your special place in this community of heartfelt stories is waiting for you. These passionate journeys of souls connecting against all odds have brought together thousands of beautiful hearts just like yours. Make sure you hit the bell too, so you'll know immediately when a new story unfolds in our Diary of Love. "We serve about 400 families in the Riverside district," Zuri heard herself saying, her professional training taking over despite the surreal circumstances. After-school programs, job training, family support services. "It's not glamorous work, but it changes lives." "It sounds like the most important work there is," Austen replied, and the sincerity in his voice made her heart skip. "How long have you been doing this?" 15 years. "Since right after college." "And what made you choose community work?" The question was so genuine, so different from the polite small talk she'd expected, that Zuri found herself giving an honest answer. "I was 17 when I had my son. Single, scared, with parents who thought I'd ruined my life. A community center coordinator named Mrs. Washington took one look at me and saw potential instead of problems. She changed everything for us." Austen nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving her face. "And now you do the same for others." "I try." "I'd like to see your center," Austen said suddenly. "Would you be willing to show me your work?" Before Zuri could respond, the sound of clapping began somewhere behind them. She turned to see Arthur Doyle, Austen's younger brother, approaching with a grin that suggested he'd enjoyed every moment of the confrontation. "Bravo," Arthur said, nodding to Zuri. "That's the most honest thing anyone's said at one of these events in years." "Austen, I like her." "Arthur," Austen warned, but his brother was undeterred. "What?" She called out mother's casual cruelty, defended her work with passion, and did it all without backing down. "That takes guts." Daphne, who had been standing in mortified silence, finally found her voice. "Austen, surely you're not going to encourage this person's inappropriate behavior?" "What I'm going to do," Austen said, his voice carrying an edge that made several nearby guests step back, "is apologize to Ms. Mills for the discourtesy she's experienced tonight. And then I'm going to make a donation to her community center." He turned back to Zuri, pulling out his phone. "What's your organization's name?" "The Riverside Community Center," Zuri replied, still reeling from the rapid turn of events. Austin's fingers moved over his phone screen. "Done. You should receive confirmation of a $50,000 donation within the hour." The amount hit Zuri like a physical blow. $50,000 was more than their annual operating budget. It was life-changing money, program-expanding money, dream-fulfilling money. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say you'll let me visit your center," Austin replied. "Say you'll show me what real community impact looks like." Around them, the ballroom buzzed with excited whispers. Phones appeared as guests documented the most scandalous moment in Chicago's social history. Daphne looked like she might faint. Molly Olson's mouth hung open in shock. But Austin only had eyes for Zuri. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why are you doing this?" Austin was quiet for a moment, studying her face. "Because in 35 years of attending these events, you're the first person who's reminded me why we're supposed to be here in the first place." He glanced around the ballroom, taking in the shocked faces and whispered conversations. "And because watching you stand up for your principles made me realize I haven't stood up for mine in far too long." Zuri felt tears prick her eyes. This wasn't how the evening was supposed to go. She was supposed to make polite conversation, accept modest donations, and go home to Damien with enough funding to keep the lights on for another month. She wasn't supposed to publicly humiliate Chicago's social elite. She wasn't supposed to meet a man whose simple questions made her feel seen and valued. She wasn't supposed to feel this overwhelming attraction to someone from a world she just condemned. A mess. "Mills," Austin said softly, and something in his tone made her look at him more carefully. "Would you like to get some air? Away from the crowd?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. Austin offered his arm with old-fashioned courtesy, and together they walked toward the ballroom's French doors that opened onto a terrace overlooking the city. Behind them, the whispers grew louder, punctuated by the soft click of camera phones capturing their exit. Chapter 2. The terrace was empty, lit by soft landscape lighting that cast long shadows across the stone floor. Chicago stretched out below them, a glittering tapestry of lights and possibilities. "I'm sorry," Zuri said suddenly. "I shouldn't have lost my temper like that. I may have damaged your family's reputation, and I certainly haven't helped the center's cause." "Are you kidding?" Austin turned to face her, and in the soft lighting, his expression was amazed. "That was incredible. Do you have any idea how long it's been since someone had the courage to call out that kind of behavior? Your mother is going to hate me." "My mother needs to examine her attitudes," Austin replied firmly. "What she said tonight was unacceptable, and I'm glad you called her on it." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, looking out over the city. The noise from the ballroom seemed far away, muffled by distance and the strange bubble of intimacy that had formed around them. "Can I ask you something?" Austin said eventually. "Of course. What you said in there, about measuring people by their character, do you really believe that?" Zuri looked at him in surprise. "Of course I do. Don't you?" Austin was quiet for so long that she wondered if she'd said something wrong. When he finally spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "I want to. I was raised to believe it. But somewhere along the way, I got caught up in the world in there. The one where success is measured in stock prices and social connections. Tonight, watching you defend your principles without caring about the consequences, I remembered what I used to believe about what really matters." "And what's that?" "That the work we do should matter more than the money we make doing it. That integrity shouldn't be negotiable. That standing up for what's right is more important than maintaining social connections." Zuri studied his profile in the soft light. "You sound like you've been thinking about this for a while." "I have been, without realizing it," Austin admitted. "Running a company, attending these events, moving in these circles, sometimes I feel like I'm playing a role instead of living my life. So why do you do it? Austin turned to look at her, and she was struck again by the intelligence in his eyes, the sense that he was really listening to her answers instead of just waiting for his turn to talk. Because it's what was expected. Because it's what I thought success looked like. Because it seemed easier than figuring out what I actually wanted. And what do you actually want? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Austin stepped closer, close enough that Zuri could see the darker flecks in his blue eyes, close enough to count the laugh lines at their corners. I want to do work that matters, he said quietly. I want to build something that makes people's lives better instead of just making shareholders richer. I want to wake up excited about the day ahead instead of going through the motions. That sounds like a good start. And I want to know more about the woman who had the courage to tell an entire ballroom full of Chicago's elite exactly what she thought of their attitudes. Zuri's breath caught. The intensity in his voice, the way he was looking at her, the fact that they were standing alone on a terrace with the city spread out below them, it all felt like something from a movie, too perfect and overwhelming to be real. I should go, she said suddenly, stepping back. I have to get home to my son, and you probably need to do damage control with your family. Zuri, wait, Austin said, catching her hand gently. Please. Let me at least drive you home. I can take the train. I know you can. But I'd like to drive you, if you'll let me. There was something in his voice, not demanding or entitled, but genuinely hopeful, that made her pause. Why? She asked. Austin smiled, and the expression transformed his entire face from merely handsome to absolutely devastating. Because I'm not ready for this conversation to end. Because I meant what I said about wanting to see your center. And because I have a feeling that meeting you might be the best thing that's happened to me in years. I'm curious, have you ever misjudged someone based on first impressions? Share your story in the comments below. 45 minutes later, Austin's sleek black sedan pulled up in front of the modest apartment building where Zuri lived with Damien. The drive had been filled with conversation that flowed as easily as if they'd known each other for years instead of hours. Austin had asked thoughtful questions about her work, her son, her dreams for the community center. Zuri had found herself sharing stories she rarely told anyone, about the teenage mother who'd earned her GED through their program, about the grandfather who'd learned to read at 70 so he could help his grandchildren with homework, about the small victories that made all the budget struggles worthwhile. In return, Austin had opened up about his own struggles with the family business, his efforts to incorporate social responsibility into corporate strategy, his growing sense that success without purpose felt hollow. This is me, Zuri said as the car stopped. The building was clean but clearly aging, with small windows and fire escapes that spoke of working-class practicality rather than luxury. It's perfect, Austin said, and he sounded like he meant it. You don't have to say that. I'm not being polite. I'm being honest. It looks like home. The simple statement. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, neither wanting to end the evening. Austin, Zuri said finally, about visiting the center, is that still an offer? It is. But I should warn you, it's not glamorous. We operate on a shoestring budget, our furniture is mismatched, and our idea of high-tech equipment is a copier that works most of the time. Austin turned to face her fully, his expression serious. Zuri, I've spent the last 10 years in boardrooms and luxury offices, surrounded by people who measure everything by its price tag. I think spending time somewhere that measures things by their impact might be exactly what I need. Tomorrow's Saturday. We run family programs all day if you really want to see what we do. What time should I be there? 9 o'clock. But Austin, she hesitated, then decided to be honest. The people we serve, they're going to be curious about why a CEO is visiting. And after tonight, there might be media attention. I don't want that to become a distraction from our work. Neither do I, Austin replied immediately. What if I come as a volunteer instead of a visitor? No cameras, no publicity. Just someone who wants to help. Zuri studied his face, looking for signs of insincerity or hidden motives. All she saw was genuine interest and something that looked like hope. Okay, she said. But I'm warning you, we put volunteers to work. You might end up serving lunch or helping kids with homework. Sounds perfect. She reached for the door handle, then paused. Austin? What happened tonight, with your mother and Molly? I'm not sorry I said what I said. But I am sorry if it caused problems for you. Austin reached over and gently touched her hand. Don't apologize for having principles, Zuri. The world needs more people like you. And fewer people like me, she replied with a small smile. No, Austin said seriously. The world needs more people like you, and it needs people like me to remember what we're supposed to be doing with our privilege and resources. Zuri looked into his eyes one more time, trying to read the sincerity there, trying to understand how one evening had turned her carefully ordered world completely upside down. I'll see you tomorrow, she said. I'll be there. She climbed out of the car and walked toward her building, feeling Austin's eyes on her until she disappeared through the front door. Only when she was safely inside did she allow herself to process what had just happened. In the space of 3 hours, she had publicly confronted Chicago's social elite, received the largest donation in her center's history, and met a man who looked at her like she was something precious and rare. As she climbed the stairs to her third-floor apartment, Zuri couldn't decide if she just made the best decision of her life or the most dangerous one. But for the first time in years, she was excited to find out which one it would be. Damien was waiting up when she walked through the door, his tall frame folded into their second-hand couch with a textbook balanced on his knees. How did it go? He asked, looking up from his homework. Did you charm any rich people into opening their wallets? Zuri sank into the chair across from him, suddenly exhausted. You could say that. That good or that bad? I honestly don't know yet. You could expand the after-school program, fix the heating system, maybe even hire another counselor. We could, Zuri agreed, watching her son's excitement. This was why she did the work, not for moments like tonight's confrontation, but for the possibilities that opened up when resources met need. So this Austin guy, he's really coming to volunteer tomorrow? That's what he said. Damien studied his mother's face with the perceptiveness of a teenager who'd learned to read adult emotions for signs of stability or threat. You like him? It wasn't a question. I barely know him, Zuri replied. That's not what I asked. Zuri looked at her son, smart, intuitive, protective, and decided on honesty. He's different than I expected. More genuine. But Damien, his world and ours are very different. I don't want you getting attached to the idea of. Mom, Damien interrupted gently. When's the last time you went on a date? This wasn't a date. When's the last time you talked to a man who made you smile like you're smiling right now? Zuri touched her face, surprised to realize she was indeed smiling. It's complicated. Most good things are. The wisdom in her 17-year-old son's voice made her laugh. When did you get so smart? I learned from the best, Damien replied, closing his textbook and standing up. I'm going to bed, but Mom? Whatever this is, whatever might happen, you deserve something good. You've spent my whole life taking care of everyone else. Maybe it's time to let someone take care of you. He kissed her forehead and headed toward his bedroom, leaving Zuri alone with her thoughts and the strange, fluttering sensation in her chest that felt suspiciously like hope. Outside her window, Chicago glittered in the distance, full of possibilities she'd never dared to imagine. Tomorrow, Austin Doyle would walk into her world, and she would discover whether the connection she'd felt tonight was real or simply the product of an emotionally charged evening. But tonight, for the first time in years, Zuri Mills went to sleep feeling like her life might be about to become something extraordinary. Chapter 3 The next morning dawned bright and clear, and Zuri arrived at the Riverside Community Center an hour early, driven by nervous energy and the need to make sure everything was perfect. Not perfect in the way Austin's world defined perfection. She couldn't change their mismatched furniture or upgrade their outdated computers overnight, but perfect in the way that mattered most: authentic, welcoming, and focused on the people they served. The center occupied a converted elementary school building from the 1960s, its brick exterior weathered but solid. Inside, the former classrooms had been transformed into spaces that buzzed with purpose: a computer lab where adults learn job skills, a childcare room filled with donated toys and handmade decorations, a kitchen that served both cooking classes and community meals, and a main gathering space where everything from town halls to birthday parties took place. Lila Briggs, the center's family services coordinator and Zuri's closest friend, arrived to find Zuri rearranging chairs for the third time. "Nervous much?" Lila observed, setting down her coffee and jacket. "I want him to understand what we do here," Zuri replied, not bothering to pretend she didn't know who Lila meant. "And you're worried he won't?" "I'm worried he will, and then what?" "Lila, this man could probably buy and sell our entire neighborhood. What if he sees potential here and decides we need to be improved? What if he wants to change everything that makes us who we are?" Lila studied her friend's face. "Or what if he sees exactly what you want him to see and decides to support it without trying to change it? People like Austin Doyle don't get involved in places like this without expecting something in return. Did he act like he expected something last night?" Zuri paused in her chair arranging. "No. He acted like he wanted to learn." "Then maybe you should give him the chance to do exactly that." At exactly 9 o'clock, Austin's sedan pulled into the parking lot. But instead of the expensive suit Zuri expected, he emerged wearing jeans, a plain gray sweater, and work boots that looked like they'd actually been used for work. He looked normal. Approachable. Like someone who belonged in their world instead of someone slumming it for the morning. "Good morning," he said as Zuri met him at the door. "I hope I'm dressed appropriately for whatever you have planned." "You look perfect," she replied, and meant it. Austin's smile was warm and genuine. "So do you." Zuri had chosen her outfit carefully: comfortable jeans and a blue sweater that brought out her eyes, professional but not formal. The way Austin was looking at her made her feel beautiful despite the modesty of her clothes. "Ready for the grand tour?" she asked. "Lead the way." The center was already alive with Saturday morning activity. In the main room, families gathered for a parenting workshop led by one of their volunteer counselors. The computer lab hummed with adults working on resumes and job applications. The children's area echoed with laughter and the sounds of creative play. Austin moved through each space with genuine curiosity, asking thoughtful questions and listening carefully to the answers. He talked with Maria, a single mother completing her medical billing certification. He listened as James, a veteran struggling with PTSD, explained how the center's support group had helped him reconnect with his family. In the children's area, Austin crouched down to 8-year-old Keisha's level as she proudly showed him the drawing she was working on. "That's beautiful," he told her seriously. "Can you tell me about it?" "It's my family," Keisha explained. "That's my mama, and that's my baby brother, and that's Ms. Mills, 'cause she takes care of us too." Austin glanced at Zuri, who was standing nearby, and she saw something soft and wondering in his expression. "Ms. Mills must be very special," he said to Keisha. "She is. She helped my mama get a job, and now we don't have to worry about getting evicted anymore." The simple statement hung in the air between them, a reminder of the real-world impact of the work being done in this converted school building. As the morning progressed, Austin seamlessly integrated into the center's activities. He helped serve lunch in the community kitchen, participated in a discussion about entrepreneurship with a group of teenagers, and even ended up reading stories to the younger children when their regular volunteer had to leave early. Watching him interact with their community members, Zuri felt her carefully maintained skepticism beginning to crumble. This wasn't a performance or a photo opportunity. Austin genuinely seemed to enjoy being there, and more importantly, the people he was talking with seemed to sense his sincerity. "He's good with people," Lila observed during a quiet moment. "Natural. Not condescending or performative. I noticed. And the way he looks at you when he thinks you're not watching? Girl, that man is smitten." Before Zuri could respond, Austin appeared at her side carrying 2 cups of coffee from the kitchen. "Thought you might need this," he said, offering her one of the cups. "Thank you. How are you holding up? This is probably very different from your usual Saturday." "It's exactly what I needed," Austin replied, and the sincerity in his voice made her heart skip. "Zuri, what you've built here, it's incredible. The way people trust each other, support each other, the sense of real community, I haven't experienced anything like this. It's not perfect. We struggle with funding, we can't help everyone who needs it, and some days it feels like we're barely keeping our heads above water. But you keep going. We keep going." Austin nodded slowly, his eyes taking in the busy, imperfect, vital space around them. "I have an idea. Would you be willing to hear me out?" Zuri felt a familiar wariness creep in. "What kind of idea?" "A partnership. Not charity, not a takeover, a genuine partnership between Doyle Industries and the Riverside Community Center." "I'm listening. What if we could provide stable, long-term funding while you maintain complete control over your programs and your mission? What if we could expand your reach without changing your values? And what would Doyle Industries get out of this partnership?" Austin was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. "A chance to do business the way it should be done. A model for how corporate resources can support community development without destroying what makes communities special. And proof that success can be measured in more than profit margins." "You're talking about using the center as a pilot program." "I'm talking about using the center as a teacher," Austin corrected. "I want to learn from what you've built here. I want to understand how to create sustainable change that actually serves the people it's supposed to help." Zuri studied his face, looking for hidden agendas or unrealistic expectations. "And when the board of directors asks what's in it for them? I'll tell them the truth, that businesses can't thrive in communities that are struggling, and that investing in community development is investing in our own long-term sustainability." "That's very idealistic." "Maybe. But I think it's also practical. And Zuri, I think it could work." Before she could respond, Damien appeared in the doorway of the main room. Zuri had texted him that morning to let him know Austin would be visiting, and her son had promised to stop by during his lunch break from his part-time job at the local bookstore. "Mom," he said, approaching them with the careful politeness he used when meeting adults he wasn't sure about. "Damien, I'd like you to meet Austin Doyle." "Austin, this is my son Damien." Austin extended his hand with the same respect he'd shown every person he'd met that morning. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Damien. Your mother has told me wonderful things about you." Damien shook his hand, and Zuri could see him taking Austin's measure. "She told me about last night. About what you did for the center." "Your mother earned that donation," Austin replied. "She reminded a room full of people what courage looks like." "She's good at that," Damien said, and Zuri could hear the pride in his voice. "So you're really interested in working with us?" "Very much so. Though I should probably ask your opinion, how do you feel about the center potentially partnering with a large corporation?" The question surprised Damien, and Zuri could see him processing the fact that Austin was treating his opinion as something that mattered. "I think it depends on the corporation," Damien said finally. "And what they want to get out of the partnership. We've had people promise to help before, but they wanted to change everything about how we operate." "What would you want from a corporate partner?" Austin asked. "Resources without strings. Support without control. And someone who understands that the people we serve aren't statistics or photo opportunities, they're our neighbors and friends." Austin nodded thoughtfully. Those seem like reasonable expectations. They are. The question is whether you can meet them. The directness of the challenge might have offended some adults, but Austin smiled. I hope I can. And if I can't, I hope you'll tell me. Oh, I will, Damien assured him. Mom raised me to speak up when something's not right. Good. The world needs more people who aren't afraid to speak truth to power. Zuri watched the interaction with growing amazement. Austin was treating her 17-year-old son as an equal, listening to his concerns and taking his questions seriously. It was a small thing, maybe, but it told her more about Austin's character than any grand gesture could have. I should get back to work, Damien said, glancing at his watch. But it was good to meet you, Mr. Doyle. Austin, please. And it was good to meet you too. After Damien left, Austin turned to Zuri with an expression she couldn't quite read. He's remarkable, he said quietly. Intelligent, thoughtful, protective of you and the center. You should be incredibly proud. I am. He's the best thing I've ever done. I can see where he gets his principles. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the activity around them. Children played while their parents attended workshops, teenagers worked on college applications in the computer lab, elderly community members shared stories and laughter in the reading corner. So, Austin said eventually, what do you think about the partnership idea? Zuri took a deep breath. I think it sounds too good to be true. But I also think you might actually mean it. And if you do, it could change everything for the families we serve. I do mean it, Zuri. I meant everything I said last night, and I mean this too. She looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of insincerity or hidden motives. All she saw was hope, determination, and something else. Something that looked like the beginning of deeper feelings. Okay, she said finally. Let's explore it. But slowly, carefully, with legal agreements and clear boundaries. Absolutely. And Austin? If this partnership doesn't work out, if it becomes more trouble than it's worth for any reason, I reserve the right to end it. No questions asked. Agreed. They shook hands on it, and Zuri felt that same electric jolt she'd experienced the night before. But this time, instead of pulling away, she allowed herself to acknowledge what was happening between them. There's something else we should discuss, Austin said, not releasing her hand. What's that? This, he said quietly, gesturing between them. Whatever this is that's happening between us. Because I don't want it to complicate the professional relationship we're building. Zuri's heart raced, but she appreciated his directness. What do you think it is? Austin stepped closer, lowering his voice so their conversation remained private despite the activity around them. I think it's the reason I couldn't stop thinking about you all night. I think it's why I was more excited about coming here today than I've been about anything in months. And I think it's why you're looking at me like you're trying to decide whether I'm the best thing that's ever happened to you or the most dangerous. The accuracy of his observation made her laugh despite her nervousness. Both, probably. Then we're on the same page. Austin, I need you to understand something. I don't date casually. I haven't dated anyone seriously since Damien was small. My life is complicated, my resources are limited, and I don't have time for games or uncertainty. I'm not interested in. I've never been more certain about wanting to get to know someone better. Even after seeing this. She gestured around the center, encompassing the mismatched furniture, the worn carpets, the controlled chaos of their Saturday programming. Especially after seeing this. Zuri, you've built something beautiful here. You've created a place where people matter more than profit, where community is more important than competition. Being here today has reminded me of who I used to want to be. And who's that? Someone who makes a difference. Someone whose work matters beyond quarterly reports and stock prices. Someone worthy of a woman like you. The last sentence was delivered so quietly she almost missed it, but the sincerity in his voice made her chest tighten with emotion. You don't need to be worthy of me, Austin. You just need to be yourself. What if myself isn't good enough? The vulnerability in the question caught her off guard. Here was one of Chicago's most successful businessmen, admitting doubt and insecurity like any other person trying to figure out how to be better. Then we'll figure it out together, she heard herself saying. Austin's smile was radiant. Does this mean you're willing to have dinner with me? Somewhere quiet where we can talk without interruption? Are you asking me on a date, Mr. Doyle? I'm asking you to give us a chance to see what this could become, Ms. Mills. Before Zuri could answer, Lila appeared at her elbow with a grin that suggested she'd been eavesdropping. Sorry to interrupt, she said, not sounding sorry at all, but we've got a situation in the kitchen that needs your attention, Zuri. What kind of situation? The good kind. Mrs. Patterson just arrived with 3 grocery bags full of ingredients and wants to teach the kids how to make her famous chocolate chip cookies. But she can't remember the recipe and is convinced she's written it down somewhere in the center. Zuri laughed. Mrs. Patterson never writes down her recipes. She measures everything by instinct and the cookies turn out different every time. That's what I told her, but she's determined to find this mythical recipe card. I should go help her, Zuri said to Austin. Mrs. Patterson is 83 and has been volunteering here since we opened. When she wants to teach the kids to bake, we figure out how to make it happen. Go, Austin said. I'll be here when you get back. Actually, Lila interjected, Austin, would you mind helping me set up tables for the cookie decorating? We're expecting about 20 kids, and I could use an extra pair of hands. I'd be happy to help. As Zuri walked toward the kitchen, she could hear Austin and Lila talking about table arrangements and decorating supplies. The easy way he'd accepted the task, the fact that he wasn't checking his phone or looking for an excuse to leave, told her more about his character than any corporate biography could have. The kitchen was in cheerful chaos when she arrived. Mrs. Patterson stood in the center of it all, surrounded by ingredients and children eager to start baking, muttering about recipe cards and measurements. Mrs. Patterson, Zuri said gently, why don't you just show the kids how you make the cookies? They don't need exact measurements, they need to learn from watching you. But what if they want to make them at home? Then they'll call you and ask for help. Which means they'll have a reason to stay connected with the center and with you. Mrs. Patterson's face lit up with understanding. That's actually better than a recipe card, isn't it? Much better. For the next hour, Zuri found herself divided between helping coordinate the cookie-making project and stealing glances at Austin as he worked with Lila to transform the main room into a cookie-decorating wonderland. He'd somehow acquired an apron that read, "Kiss the Cook," in faded letters, probably donated by someone who thought it was funny. And was seriously discussing the merits of different colored frostings with a group of 8-year-olds who treated him like he'd been part of their community for years. He fits, Mrs. Patterson observed, following Zuri's gaze. I'm sorry. You're young man. He fits here. Not everyone does, you know. We've had volunteers who come in wanting to help but never quite understanding what we're about. He understands. He's not my young man, Mrs. Patterson. The elderly woman's knowing smile suggested she wasn't buying Zuri's denial. Well, he should be. A woman your age shouldn't be alone, especially not when there's a good man right there who looks at her like she hung the moon. It's complicated. The best things usually are, dear. But complicated doesn't mean impossible. When the cookies were finally in the oven and the children had moved on to the decorating station, Zuri found Austin washing dishes at the kitchen sink, his sleeves rolled up and soap suds covering his hands. You don't have to do that, she said. I know. But it needs to be done, and I have 2 hands. Something about the simple statement, the lack of entitlement, the recognition that work needed doing regardless of who did it, made her heart clench with an emotion she wasn't ready to name. "Austin," she said quietly. He turned to look at her, and she was struck again by how different he looked here in her world. Less polished, more real, like the expensive clothes and corporate title had been a costume he'd been wearing without realizing it. "Yes?" "About dinner, yes." His smile was brilliant. "Really?" "Really. But somewhere quiet, like you said. Somewhere we can actually talk. I know just the place. Are you free tonight?" "Tonight?" The suggestion caught her off guard. "That's soon. Too soon." Zuri considered. Every reasonable part of her brain said yes, it was too soon, too fast, too risky. But looking at Austin, covered in flour, wearing a ridiculous apron, more attractive than any man had a right to be while doing dishes, she found her reasonable brain being overruled by something else entirely. "No," she said. "Tonight is perfect. What's a moment when someone surprised you by seeing past your surface to who you really are? Share your story of being truly seen. These connections remind us we're all worthy of authentic love." As the afternoon wound down and the last of the families headed home with containers of still warm cookies, Zuri found herself both exhausted and exhilarated. The day had been everything she'd hoped for. Austin had seen their work at its best, had participated naturally and meaningfully, and had clearly understood what made their community special. More than that, she'd seen him in her world, and he'd fit in a way that both thrilled and terrified her. "So," Lila said as they finished cleaning up, "dinner tonight?" "How did you, never mind." "Yes, dinner tonight." "Where's he taking you?" "I don't know. Somewhere quiet where we can talk." "What are you going to wear?" It was such a normal, feminine question that Zuri almost laughed. When was the last time she'd worried about what to wear on a date? When was the last time she'd been on an actual date? "I have no idea," she admitted. "Come on," Lila said, grabbing her purse. "We're going shopping." "Lila, I can't afford my treat. Consider it an investment in your happiness. Besides, I've been waiting years for you to meet someone worth getting dressed up for." As they headed toward the door, Austin appeared with his jacket in hand. "Thank you," he said to Zuri. "For today, for letting me be part of this. It was transformative. Thank you for being here. For understanding what we're trying to do. I'll pick you up at 7. 7 is perfect." Austin leaned down and kissed her cheek, a gentle, respectful gesture that somehow felt more intimate than a more aggressive move would have. His lips were warm against her skin, and he smelled like cookie dough and possibility. "Until tonight," he said softly. After he left, Zuri stood in the doorway for a moment, touching the spot where he'd kissed her and trying to process how much her life had changed in 24 hours. "Girl," Lila said, watching her expression, "you are in so much trouble." "I know," Zuri replied. "Good trouble or bad trouble? I honestly don't know yet. But Lila? For the first time in years, I don't care. Whatever this is, wherever it leads, I want to find out." As they walked toward Lila's car, Zuri felt something she hadn't experienced in so long she'd almost forgotten what it was called: anticipation. Tonight, she would have dinner with Austin Doyle, and maybe, just maybe, she would discover that some fairy tales were possible even for single mothers from the South Side who had learned to expect less than they deserved. But first, she had to figure out what to wear. Chapter 4. 2 hours later, Zuri stood in front of her bedroom mirror wearing a simple black dress that Lila had insisted was perfect, elegant but not overdone, sophisticated but still accessible. Her hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders, and she'd applied just enough makeup to feel confident without feeling like she was wearing a costume. She looked good. More than good, she looked like a woman who deserved to be taken to dinner by a man who saw her worth. The doorbell rang at exactly 7 o'clock, and Zuri opened it to find Austin standing in the hallway holding a single yellow rose. He'd changed from his volunteer clothes into dark slacks and a navy button-down shirt that brought out his eyes, but he still looked approachable, like the man who'd spent the afternoon helping children decorate cookies rather than the CEO who commanded boardroom meetings. "You look beautiful," he said simply, offering her the flower. "Thank you. So do you." "Handsome, I mean." Austin's smile was warm. "Ready? Where are we going? Trust me?" It was a loaded question, given everything that hung between them, the class differences, the potential business partnership, the undeniable attraction that could complicate everything. But looking into his eyes, Zuri realized she did trust him, at least enough to see where the evening would lead. "Yes," she said. Austin's car was waiting outside, but instead of heading toward downtown or one of Chicago's trendy neighborhoods, he drove toward the lakefront. 20 minutes later, they pulled up in front of a small Italian restaurant tucked into a quiet residential street, the kind of place that looked like it had been serving the same families for generations. "Mama Rosselli's," Austin said as he helped her out of the car. "It's been here for 40 years, and they make the best carbonara in the city." No pretentious wine lists, no celebrity chef nonsense, just incredible food and the kind of service that makes you feel like family. The interior was exactly what Zuri had expected: checkered tablecloths, photographs of Italy covering the walls, and the warm smell of garlic and fresh bread. An elderly woman with silver hair and bright eyes appeared immediately, embracing Austin like a long-lost grandson. "Austin. You brought us someone special tonight," she said, beaming at Zuri. "Mama Rosselli, I'd like you to meet Zuri Mills." "Zuri, this is Mama Rosselli, who's been feeding me since I was in college and too broke to afford anywhere else." "Welcome, beautiful girl," Mama Rosselli said, taking Zuri's hands in hers. "Any friend of Austin's is family here. Come, I have the perfect table for you." She led them to a small table in a quiet corner, lit by a single candle and set with simple white plates and cloth napkins. It was intimate without being showy, romantic without trying too hard. "No menus tonight," Mama Rosselli announced. "I'll bring you what's best." "Austin, the usual wine?" "Actually," Austin said, glancing at Zuri, "what would you recommend for someone who's trying something new?" "Ah," Mama Rosselli said with knowing eyes, "new beginnings. I have just the thing." After she bustled away, Austin leaned back in his chair and really looked at Zuri for the first time since picking her up. "You're nervous," he observed. "A little. It's been a while since I did this." "What, ate Italian food?" "Went on a date," Zuri said honestly. Austin reached across the table and touched her hand gently. "We don't have to call it a date if that makes you more comfortable. We can call it two people sharing a meal and getting to know each other better. What would you like to call it?" "The beginning of something important," Austin said quietly. The sincerity in his voice made her heart skip, but before she could respond, Mama Rosselli returned with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. "A nice Chianti," she explained, pouring for both of them. "Not too fancy, but perfect for new romance." "Mama," Austin protested, but she waved him off. "I know love when I see it, bambino. I've been married to the same man for 52 years, you think I don't recognize the signs?" After she left, Austin and Zuri sat in slightly embarrassed silence for a moment. "I should apologize for her," Austin said. "She's been trying to marry me off for years." "Don't apologize. She's sweet. And she obviously cares about you." "She does. When I was in college, working 3 jobs and living on ramen noodles, she used to let me wash dishes in exchange for real meals. Said no boy should have to choose between eating and paying rent. That's incredibly kind." It was. And it taught me something important about the difference between charity and community. She didn't pity me, she just saw someone who needed help and found a way to provide it without making me feel small. Zuri nodded, understanding the distinction completely. "That's what we try to do at the center. Create opportunity instead of dependency. Which is why what you've built is so remarkable. And why I think we could accomplish something incredible together. The conversation that followed was unlike any Zuri had experienced. Austin asked thoughtful questions about her background, her dreams for the center, her hopes for Damien's future. In return, he shared stories about his struggles to balance profit with purpose, his growing sense that success without meaning felt hollow, his desire to build something that would matter beyond his own lifetime. They talked through antipasto and salad, through Mama Rosselli's famous carbonara and tiramisu that appeared without being ordered. They talked about books they'd loved, places they wanted to travel, the small moments that had shaped their worldviews. "Tell me about Damien's father," Austin said gently as they shared the dessert. Zuri was quiet for a moment, considering how much to share. His name was Marcus. "We met in high school. He was charming, popular, everything I thought I wanted. When I got pregnant senior year, he promised we'd figure it out together. 2 weeks later, he transferred to a school in another state and I never heard from him again." "I'm sorry." "I'm not," Zuri said, surprising herself with the honesty. "If he'd stayed, I might have married him, and we would have been miserable. Damien deserved better than a father who saw him as an obligation rather than a gift. He got better. He got you." The simple statement hit her harder than any elaborate compliment could have. "Thank you for saying that. I'm not just saying it. Watching you with him today, seeing how proud he is of you, how naturally he steps into a protective role, that doesn't happen by accident. You raised an incredible young man." "What about you?" Zuri asked, deflecting the praise that still made her uncomfortable. "Ever been close to marriage?" Austin was quiet for so long she wondered if she'd overstepped. When he finally spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "Once. Her name was Veronica. We dated for 3 years, got engaged, planned the wedding. She was everything my mother wanted for me, well-educated, socially connected, beautiful in that polished way that photographs well. What happened? I realized I was marrying the idea of her rather than actually being in love with her. And she was marrying my name and my bank account rather than actually being in love with me. We would have had a very successful marriage and been completely miserable." "When did you realize that?" "About 6 months before the wedding. I was at a company retreat, listening to some consultant talk about authentic leadership, and I suddenly understood that I was about to commit to a completely inauthentic life. I called off the wedding the next day. That must have been difficult. It was the right thing to do, but yes, it was difficult. Veronica was angry, my mother was mortified, and half of Chicago society thought I'd lost my mind. But for the first time in months, I could breathe again." "Any regrets?" Austin met her eyes across the candlelit table. "Not a single one. If I'd married Veronica, I never would have been free to meet you." The intensity in his voice made her pulse quicken. "Austin, I know it's too soon to say things like that. I know we barely know each other. But Zuri, I have never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. You make me want to be the person I always thought I could be. What if I disappoint you? What if I'm not as remarkable as you think I am? What if you're more remarkable than I can even imagine?" The question hung between them, loaded with possibility and hope and the terrifying prospect of being truly seen by another person. They might have sat there all evening, lost in conversation and the growing awareness that something significant was happening between them, but Austin's phone began buzzing insistently on the table. "I'm sorry," he said, glancing at the screen. "It's my assistant. She wouldn't call unless it was urgent." "Take it," Zuri said. Austin answered the phone, and Zuri watched his expression change from mild concern to something approaching alarm. "What do you mean they're running it tonight?" he said into the phone. "I thought we had until Monday to respond." He listened for a moment, then looked at Zuri with apologetic eyes. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said, ending the call. "What's wrong?" Zuri asked. There's a story running on the late news tonight about last night's fundraiser. Apparently someone captured video of your confrontation with my mother, and it's being framed as a scandal involving my family and your center. Zuri felt her blood turn cold. What kind of scandal? I don't know yet. But my PR team says it's bad enough that the board is demanding an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. I need to get to the office and see the footage before it airs. Of course. Go. Come with me, Austin said suddenly. What? Come with me. If this story is about both of us, you should see it too. And Zuri, whatever it says, whatever they're trying to make this into, we'll handle it together. 20 minutes later, they were in Austin's office building, riding the elevator to the executive floor. The building was mostly empty at 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, but Austin's assistant Rachel was waiting for them with a laptop and a grim expression. How bad is it? Austin asked without preamble. See for yourself, Rachel replied, clicking play on the video. The footage was clearly shot on someone's phone from across the ballroom, but it captured every word of Zuri's confrontation with Daphne and Molly. More damaging was the commentary that had been added by the news station, suggesting that Zuri had deliberately created a scene to manipulate Austin into making a large donation. Sources close to the Doyle family suggest this may have been a calculated attempt to exploit Mr. Doyle's well-known charitable impulses, the reporter intoned. Questions are being raised about Ms. Mills' true motivations and whether the Riverside Community Center is using aggressive tactics to secure funding from wealthy donors. The story concluded with a statement from family friends, expressing concern about Austin being taken advantage of by opportunistic individuals who prey on his generous nature. Zuri felt sick. In the space of 90 seconds, the news report had painted her as a calculating gold digger and reduced her life's work to a scam designed to separate wealthy people from their money. This is a disaster, she said quietly. It's manageable, Austin replied, but his jaw was tight with anger. Rachel, I want to know who provided this commentary. And I want a statement prepared refuting every implication in this piece. Austin, Zuri said, touching his arm. Don't make this worse by fighting it. The damage is done. What damage? This is garbage journalism based on gossip and speculation. This is what happens when people from my world intersect with people from yours. Someone always gets hurt, and it's never the person with power and money. Austin turned to face her fully, his expression intense. You're not backing away from this. From us. I have to think about the center, Austin. If this partnership makes us look opportunistic or unethical, it could destroy everything we've built. Our reputation is all we have. Then we'll rebuild your reputation. We'll show them who you really are. By doing what? Making more donations that will be seen as hush money? Appearing together publicly so they can speculate about our relationship? By telling the truth. The truth doesn't matter if no one wants to hear it. Austin was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe this is a sign that some worlds are too different to bridge. Maybe what happened between us last night and today was beautiful but not sustainable. Zuri, you don't mean that. I don't know what I mean anymore. But I know I can't let my personal feelings jeopardize the center or the families we serve. The pain in Austin's eyes almost made her reconsider, but the weight of responsibility she carried for so many people's welfare kept her resolve firm. I should go, she said quietly. You have damage control to do, and I need to prepare for whatever fallout this creates for us. Let me drive you home. I'll take a cab. You need to be here. Austin caught her hand as she turned to leave. This isn't over, Zuri. Whatever they're trying to do, whatever story they're trying to tell. It doesn't change what's real between us. Maybe not, she replied. But it might change what's possible. The cab ride home felt like the longest journey of her life. Zuri stared out the window at the city lights, trying to process how quickly everything had changed. 24 hours ago, she'd been a single mother doing her best to serve her community. Now she was apparently the villain in some kind of social drama she'd never asked to be part of. Her phone buzzed with a text from Lila. "Just saw the news. Are you okay?" Then another from Damien, "Mom, what the hell is this story about? Call me." And another from a number she didn't recognize, "Saw you on TV. About time someone called out those rich bitches." By the time she reached her apartment, she had 17 messages and 6 missed calls. The story was spreading beyond the local news, picking up momentum on social media and turning her life into public entertainment. Damien was waiting in the living room when she walked in, his laptop open and his expression worried. "Mom, this is insane. They're making you sound like some kind of con artist." "I know, baby. What are you going to do?" Zuri sank into her chair, suddenly exhausted. "I don't know. Lay low, hope it dies down, focus on our work and let that speak for itself." "What about Austin? Are you going to keep seeing him?" "I don't know that either." Damien studied her face with the perception that still amazed her. "You're scared." "I'm terrified. Not of the media attention, that will pass. But Damien, what if they're right? What if I am out of my league? What if I got caught up in the fairy tale and lost sight of reality?" "Mom." Damien closed his laptop and leaned forward, his voice serious. "I've watched you my entire life fight for people who needed someone in their corner. I've seen you turn down funding that came with strings attached because you wouldn't compromise your principles. You are the most ethical person I know. But what if, no what ifs. You didn't seek Austin out, he came to you. You didn't ask for his donation, he offered it. And from what I saw today, he didn't just write a check and walk away. He showed up, he participated, he listened. That's not someone being manipulated, that's someone choosing to be involved." Zuri looked at her son, amazed once again by his wisdom and maturity. "When did you get so smart?" "I learned from the best," he replied with a small smile. "Mom, don't let them make you ashamed of who you are or what you've built. And don't let fear keep you from something that could be incredible. What if it doesn't work out? What if the differences between us are too big to overcome? Then at least you'll know you tried. But Mom, what if it does work out? What if you're exactly what he needs, and he's exactly what you need, and all this noise is just noise?" That night, Zuri lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment from the past 2 days. The confrontation at the gala, the spark she'd felt when Austin defended her, the way he'd looked at her across the dinner table like she was something precious. But she also replayed the news story, the implications about her motives, the potential damage to the center's reputation. She thought about all the families who depended on their services, all the children who counted on the after-school program, all the adults working toward better lives through their job training programs. Could she risk all of that for a chance at personal happiness? Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Austin, "I know you're probably not ready to talk, but I want you to know that nothing, not the media, not my family, not the board of directors, is going to change how I feel about you or my commitment to supporting your work. Sleep well, and we'll figure this out together." Zuri stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "Thank you for everything. I just need some time to think." His response came immediately, "Take all the time you need. I'll be here." Sunday morning brought more media attention, but also something unexpected, support. The center's phone rang constantly with people calling to defend Zuri's character and offering donations to show their backing. Social media posts from families they'd served began appearing, sharing stories about how the center had changed their lives. "People are rallying around you," Lila said, showing Zuri her phone screen filled with positive comments. "They know who you are and what you stand for." "It's incredible," Zuri admitted, reading testimonial after testimonial from community members. So what are you going to do about Austin? I don't know. Part of me thinks this whole situation proves we're from different worlds that don't mix well. But another part of me keeps thinking about what Damien said. What if this works out? What does your heart tell you? That I'm falling in love with him, Zuri said quietly. That I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about Austin. That he makes me believe I deserve good things. Then maybe you should listen to your heart. Before Zuri could respond, her phone rang. Austin's name appeared on the screen. Hi, she said, answering on the second ring. Hi. How are you holding up? Better than expected. Our community is rallying around us in amazing ways. I've seen the posts. I'm not surprised, people who know you understand exactly who you are. What about your family? The board? I'm handling them. Zuri, I have an idea, but I want to run it past you first. What kind of idea? What if we held a press conference at the center? Not to defend ourselves, but to showcase the work you do and announce our partnership officially. Let people see the center, meet the families you serve, understand what we're actually trying to accomplish together. You want to make this more public? I want to control the narrative instead of letting other people tell our story. And Zuri, I want to make it clear that I'm not just supporting your work, I'm supporting you. Personally and professionally. Austin, that could backfire spectacularly. Or it could show everyone what I see when I look at you and your work. That this isn't about charity or guilt or social obligation, it's about genuine partnership and mutual respect. Zuri was quiet for a long moment, considering the risks and possibilities. When? Tuesday afternoon. If you're willing. I'm willing, she said, surprising herself. But Austin, if we do this, we're all in. No halfway measures, no easy retreats if things get complicated. I wouldn't want it any other way. Tuesday afternoon, the Riverside Community Center was packed with reporters, cameras, and curious community members. But instead of feeling like a media circus, the event felt like a celebration of everything the center represented. Austin spoke first, explaining his decision to partner with the center in terms of business sense and social responsibility. But when he introduced Zuri, his voice carried something that went beyond professional respect. Zuri Mills has built something extraordinary here, he said, looking directly at her as she approached the podium. She's created a place where people are valued for their potential rather than judged by their circumstances. She's shown me what authentic leadership looks like, and I'm honored to support her work. Zuri's remarks focused on the center's mission and their plans for expansion through the partnership. But when she talked about Austin's involvement, she spoke with warmth that was impossible to miss. Austin Doyle didn't just write a check and walk away, she said. He showed up, he listened, he participated in our community like he belonged here. That's not charity, that's partnership. The questions from reporters were pointed but not hostile, and both Austin and Zuri handled them with grace and honesty. When someone asked directly about their personal relationship, Austin answered without hesitation. I have tremendous respect and admiration for Zuri Mills, both personally and professionally. She's a remarkable woman doing important work, and I'm grateful to know her. After the formal press conference ended, reporters mingled with community members, seeing firsthand the impact of the center's programs. Children proudly showed off their artwork, adults talked about job training opportunities, and families shared stories about how the center had supported them through difficult times. This was brilliant, Lila whispered to Zuri as they watched a reporter interview Mrs. Patterson about her volunteer cooking classes. Look at them. They're seeing the real story. As the crowd began to thin, Austin found Zuri in her office, where she was reviewing the partnership contracts that would be signed the next day. How do you think it went? He asked. Better than I hoped. Thank you for thinking of this. Thank you for trusting me enough to go along with it. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, both aware that they'd crossed another threshold together. The partnership was real now, public and official. But more than that, they declared their mutual respect and admiration in front of the entire city. "Zuri," Austin said quietly, "I know we've been focused on the professional relationship, but I need you to know that my feelings for you haven't changed. If anything, watching you handle this situation with such grace and integrity has made me even more certain about what I want." "And what's that?" "You. Us. A chance to see what we could build together, both personally and professionally." Zuri looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity there, the hope, the willingness to take risks for something he believed could be extraordinary. "I want that too," she said quietly. "I'm scared of how different our worlds are, but I'm more scared of wondering what if we don't try." Austin's smile was radiant. "So we try?" "We try." He stepped closer, reaching up to cup her face gently. "May I kiss you? I've been wanting to since the moment I met you." Instead of answering with words, Zuri rose on her toes and met him halfway. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a question and an answer all at once. But when she didn't pull away, Austin deepened the kiss, and Zuri felt something settle into place in her chest, the feeling of coming home, of finding where she belonged. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing unsteadily. "That was worth waiting for," Austin said softly. "We're really doing this," Zuri said, half statement, half question. "We're really doing this. Whatever comes next, we'll figure it out together." If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to remember their worth. Subscribe for more stories about love conquering fear and finding authentic connection. Tomorrow's story explores what happens when a second chance arrives 20 years too late. 6 months later, the Riverside Community Center had tripled its programming and was serving over 1,000 families. The partnership with Doyle Industries had become a model for corporate community engagement, studied by business schools and replicated in cities across the country. But the most remarkable transformation wasn't in the center's expansion or the accolades they'd received. It was in the quiet moments between Austin and Zuri. The Sunday mornings he spent at the center reading to children, the evening walks they took through her neighborhood, the way they'd learned to bridge their different worlds without losing what made each of them unique. "I have something to ask you," Austin said one evening as they sat on the steps of the community center, watching Damien play basketball with a group of younger kids. "What's that?" Austin pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, and Zuri's heart stopped. "Zuri Mills," he said, dropping to one knee right there on the steps where they'd had so many conversations, "you've shown me what it means to live authentically, to measure success by impact rather than income, to believe that different worlds can become one world when people choose love over fear." Tears were already streaming down her face as he opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant solitaire. "Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life learning from your strength and supporting your dreams?" "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, Austin Doyle, I will marry you." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Damien hooped from the basketball court, and several community members who'd been watching from the windows burst into applause. "I love you," Austin said, pulling her into his arms. "I love you too," Zuri replied, kissing him as the Chicago skyline glittered behind them. "All of you. The CEO and the volunteer, the man who writes checks and the one who gets his hands dirty helping kids with homework. Even the part of me that still can't make Mrs. Patterson's cookies turn out the same way twice. Especially that part." As they sat together on the steps of the center that had brought them together, surrounded by the community that had embraced their love story, Zuri reflected on how much had changed since that angry confrontation at the charity gala. She'd learned that some connections transcend circumstances, that love doesn't always follow logical paths, and that sometimes the most beautiful relationships begin with the courage to speak truth to power. But most importantly, she'd learned that when you're brave enough to be authentically yourself, you create space for others to do the same. And in that space, extraordinary things can happen. Partnerships that change communities, love that bridges worlds, and families that are built on choice rather than just genetics. The woman who had mocked the CEO's family had shocked the entire city, all right. But not in the way anyone expected. She'd shocked them by showing what was possible when people chose to see beyond surface differences to the heart of what really mattered. And as Austin held her close while their community celebrated around them, Zuri knew that the most shocking thing of all was how perfectly their different pieces had fit together to create something neither of them could have built alone.